The top of Mount Trashmore, which for a while there we fought the name Mount Trashmore, but it turns out that the public is very strong-willed, and no matter how much we fought it, that was the name that people knew it by. So we cave. This is Mount Trashmore, and welcome to the top. The climb up is just about 208, 209-ish feet be the climb, and our above sea level elevation's around 952 feet here. You can see some of the city skyline out there in the distance. You can see, of course, the Alliant Tower being the real tall building. If you head to the right from the Alliant Tower, you'll see a brick red building. That's Mercy Hospital. Same red brick coloring, but further off to the right and way out on the horizon, you'll see Mercy University. Mercy University has a steeple that is about 1.5 feet higher in elevation than we are right here. So while this is definitely one of the highest points you can stand on and take a look at the view of Cedar Rapids, it's not technically the highest structure you can be at the top of. A couple of other things that might be of interest for you to see. Of course, we have the Cedar River running around this direction. Otis Road over on the side I'm pointing towards. But this is a really big part of what impacted the flood in 2008. This site used to be a quarry that was mining material to create concrete for the construction in this area. That quarry ended up giving us a natural hole in the ground that was lined by limestone and other rock-hard materials, clay. So they decided, of course, 50 years ago, this is a great place to put the trash. This landfill is approaching its 50-year anniversary. There's a lot of material underneath of our feet, and it's kind of like a little lesson in history. As you were to dig down deeper and deeper and deeper, we would be going back further and further and further into the past history of Cedar Rapids. There's a quote, and I cannot come up with who said this for the life of me, so if you know, please tell me. They will know us by our trash. I read this, I know I read this, I hope I'm not making it up. It's absolutely true, though. So, my name is Jason Evans. I am the Director of Education for the Cedar Rapids-Linn County Solid Waste Agency. So I spend a lot of my time in schools with students. I spend my time with green teams and businesses. We talk about ways we can be more environmentally friendly. So why not talk about it on top of a gigantic mound of discarded materials? So let's back up a second and talk about that flood again. When the Cedar River started rising from all of that water that we had rushing down from the north, from the rain, from the river swells, this area of the river is naturally shallow and it becomes a little bit narrower. So we call it a choke point. By choking that water back as it flowed around the bends here, it ended up spilling out over on the far side of the river from where we are. If you look at our buildings down there, we only had about 1.5 to 2 feet of water in any of our buildings. Doesn't make any sense because we're so close right up on the bank of the river. The majority of the water went across the river on the other side. You can see the bridges over here. The one closest to us is the Czech Lion Bridge. And then as you go further back, you can go towards 380 and you can see the whole island there. This is by far one of my favorite places in the entire city. I have come up here about 1,000 times and I have brought nearly, I'd say close to 6,000 people up here maybe. Every year, every 6th grader in Cedar Rapids Public District and a few other districts in the area come up and spend half a day. We learn about composting, we learn about landfilling. So let's go over how a landfill is made. Landfill starts with a hole in the ground. There's a natural layer of earth at the very bottom of that hole called the subgrade. That subgrade could be any material. It's where we stop digging the hole. On top of the subgrade goes 4 feet of compacted clay. That clay is compacted so that the flow rate of water moving through it would be at 10 to the negative 7th to 10 to the negative 9th. That just means if I pour water on top of the clay, before that water gets through the 4 feet of compacted clay, 700 years will pass. That's really awesome, except for those of you that are going to be born in 701 years from now. They're going to be looking back at us and saying, what on earth were they thinking? Because now we've contaminated their water supply. You know, of course, we're part of the Jordan Aquifer in the area. We're part of many different watersheds in the area. We have to make a conscious effort to protect those. This landfill, unfortunately, does not have that 4 feet of compacted clay at the bottom. 50 years ago, that was not a technology that they used. Okay? The description I'm giving you about this 4 feet of clay at the bottom layer of the landfill applies to the one out in Marion on County Home Road, which is a much more modern landfill. On top of that 4 feet of clay, in order to keep the people from 701 years into the future really being upset at us, there's a geomembrane liner. And a geomembrane liner is a high-density polyethylene plastic layer. That layer is laid out in strips. When I talk with kids, we usually have a school bus up here with us. Those strips are about the same width as the length of a school bus, and they're rolled out all the way down the side slopes, across the bottom, and up the opposite slope in a landfill. Then those rolls are overlapped, and they're welded together. There's 2 weld lines that are made, so if you looked at my hands, you'd see the fingertips on my top hand and the fingertips on my bottom hand. These are the points of the welds. They go the entire length of the roll where they've been overlapped. In the center of those welds, like I'm curving my hand, you'll see there's a channel in between them. It's like a long straw running the length of the geomembrane liner. We can pressurize the air that's inside of that channel to 35 pounds per square inch. If after 5 or 6 minutes it's 34 pounds per square inch, we know there's a problem. What's that problem? There's a leak. If we're still holding 35 pounds per square inch 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 minutes later, we know that those welds are adequate and we can move on to the next step. We can always go back and pressurize these channels. We can always check for those things. The next layer up, we use a geosynthetic textile liner. It's basically a diamond weave of high-density polyethylene plastic with a felt mesh material on the top and the bottom. I'm still not at the landfill layers that are on the landfill underneath of us. We're still at too modern of a landfill, but we're going to get there. That layer acts as a filter. It keeps some of the larger or sharper debris from getting down and puncturing or interacting with that geomembrane liner. Water will not go through a geomembrane liner. It's impermeable. It should last thousands of years. So the 700-year 4-foot clay layer is a backup layer against a failure for the geomembrane layer, which is protected by the geosynthetic textile liner. And then on top of that, we're going to go ahead and lay down about 4 feet of sand. Hi. This is my son, Daniel. And he totally distracted me because I skipped a layer, so we're going to back up below the sand. There's a gravel layer below that sand layer, and there's a pipe structure that's laid into that gravel. That pipe structure is perforated, and it grabs the water, the precipitation, the water that's leaked out of the organic materials that are in the landfill, and it collects it up and it pumps it out. Now that's really important because as the water moves through and percolates down through the trash, it picks up the biological and the chemical materials that are present, contaminating the water and creating something we call leachate, or garbage juice. Now garbage juice, that leachate, is actually more important than you'd think it is because it's a perfect environment to host microbe activity. Those microbes help to decompose the trash that's in the landfill. So, from this system forward, what I'm describing is in this landfill. The leachate system is here in this landfill, and that leachate system pumps that leachate up, and we can recirculate it around in the landfill to keep those microbes in contact with the material that's underneath of our feet. We can also back it up into a holding pond to evaporate it, collect off the sediment. It can be sent directly to waste control facilities, wastewater treatment facility, and it can also be sent off in tanker trucks. There's a 4-system redundancy in place for that. We're sitting right next to a river. Today's standards would not allow us to build a landfill near a river, but we have one by a river. So these systems are in place to help to protect and keep those leachate and contaminants from ever entering the river around us. Now we're at the sand layer. It's very anticlimactic now. It's really a cushioning layer because we're about to drive 110,000-pound machines with steel spike and clawed wheels over top of these layers of trash, and we need to protect the systems underneath. It's also another filtration layer. And then we get to do the trash dance. It goes trash, dirt, trash, dirt, trash, dirt, trash, dirt. And this happens over and over and over and over and over. Not in a big long straight line across the bottom of the landfill, but in these little pockets. So today's trash goes right here. And then we cover that pile with 6 inches of dirt, which keeps vectors, which are the animals like raccoons and deer and geese and duck and skunk. We have lots of skunk up here, so we'll want to be down before the sun is gone. Keeps them out of the trash, keeps them from nesting in it so we don't disturb them then later on. Keeps the smell down. It doesn't smell so bad here. And if you smell anything, it's not the landfill, it's the compost over there, right? True story, too. It also keeps the trash from blowing away before it's covered and becoming litter out in the public. Okay, so long story short, next day we move over and we put our trash here, and then we put 6 inches of dirt, and we move over and we move over, and when we get to the end we go forward, and then we move over and we move over. And we get all these little cells of this trash that are covered by 6 inches of cover dirt or cover material. As we continue to build up and up and up and up, we end up where we are now. And then we use the same systems that are at the bottom, repeated on the top, to make this sort of sealed system like an eggshell around the landfill. Another geomembrane liner goes in place, another 4 feet of clay goes in place that's been compacted down. Eventually we're going to end up with some black earth, some topsoil, some compost mixed in, and these native prairie grasses that are starting to grow on the side slopes that you see here. We can't plant trees up here, any idea why? Root systems potentially could damage that geomembrane liner. I don't know of a lot of research on it, but nobody wants to be the first landfill to find out they made it through. So we're not doing that. There is some research in Japan going on right now to use shallow rooting trees. We're just not there yet here in Cedar Rapids. So in the end then, we go out and we look for a firm. We hire a firm to do some blueprints and some drawings and some concepts, and this becomes a public park. This will be a public park probably in the next 5 or 6 years. In fact, we've already selected and hired the firm, and our draft drawings, Bill, are due really soon, right?
The product, well, the draft here in about a month and a half, and then by March we'll have a pretty good idea.
So we're that close to knowing what this will be. Unfortunately, it does not include a ski slope. I know, this is the one rumor I fight more than any rumor in the public. We had a board member a long time ago go skiing down it, and it got into the media, and it became this, this is probably not going to become a ski slope. There are too many systems in place that would be disturbed. This landfill will continuously shift and settle through time, which means building permanent structures on it is going to be very complicated, if not impossible. So the ski lift idea doesn't work so well. The big windmill idea doesn't work so well, unfortunately, even though it is always windy up here.
Restaurant.
I don't know. As long as it's not built with a standard foundation and the brick walls and stuff, it should be fine. But most likely this will end up as a system of trails, picnic tables, park benches, interpretive signs, grasses, prairie grasses, flowers, things like that, views. Kind of like what we're doing tonight.
What about the kayak run? They were talking about that.
A kayak run up here?
Yeah. We voted against it one time.
Oh, well then, that'll tell you.
That was at the bottom of the hill.
But that's got to be down there at the river. I mean, there's no...
No, they were going to do a kayak run down this mountain.
No, it was in the river.
I hadn't heard of that one. But you'll have to forgive me because I've only worked here for a little over 4 years. I used to teach 2nd grade in the area, so I might be still learning some. Yeah.
Okay. The Whitewater Park, the kayak, that was down in the river. That was the river. But what they did talk about was a luge run.
Oh, that makes more sense than a kayak run. I was trying to come up with how we're getting the water up top, and when we're so sensitive to leachate, why we would want to run water down the side of the hill. A luge run I've not heard of, so I can't really comment to that one. We do. We do have to get dirt. Now out in Marion, it's easy. We dig a new cell, that dirt becomes a stockpile, that then fills in on those daily cover lines. Out here, Bill, do you know the history of the dirt? Where'd we get our daily cover from?
Actually, I don't know the answer to that. I know we purchased it.
I know it was brought in, but I don't know where from. You don't know?
I'm afraid I don't.
Okay. Down here, it would have had to have been brought in and purchased. Okay, so there's a lining system I talked about that was sand. How many of you are familiar with the Iowa City landfill fire? That sand layer was instead made out of tire chips there. Those tire chips are what caught fire with a hot load or a load that was smoldering once it was dropped. So that explains some of the background on that Iowa City landfill fire. We've used sand now in place of the tire chips to be sensitive to that, although tire chips are still allowed by DNR regulation on the side slopes. I'm going to hang out for a little while. If you have any other questions or you want to talk more about any of this, you're welcome to come on over here. I've way exceeded my 10 minutes, so yeah.
Thank you.